Pittsburgh Steelers are enjoying their glass of Guinness on this glorious victory Monday here. The Steelers defeated the Minnesota Vikings 24-21 in the first ever regular season game in Ireland. Welcome to Black and Gold Overtime. I'm Riley Holsinger. I'm going to be joined here momentarily by Alan Saunders from Pittsburgh Steelers Now. You can follow him on social media at A Saunders _PGH. And let's bring him into the program now. There's Alan right there. Alan, this win had to feel pretty good for the Steelers organization. Of course, with all of the ties dating back to Dan Rooney, the Rooney family just in general, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I from listening to the interviews in the locker room after this win, it seems like Mike Tomlin gave a heck of a speech the night before about the late ambassador Dan Rooney, what he personally meant to Tomlin, giving him the opportunity to become a head coach in the NFL, and Tomlin's very strong desire to pay that back with a win, the first NFL regular season game in Ireland, what he called Dan Rooney's vision for the Steelers to play there, and really felt like a real full circle moment for the Steelers there. That's something they've been looking forward to for a long time. When you talk about how much something means to you, and the Steelers did a whole lot leading up to this game, it says a lot when you're able to follow through with an inspired performance, and they certainly did that. I thought they were wire to wire the better team against the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, and I loved too that after the game, somebody asked Aaron Rodgers if Ireland did enough to deserve another NFL regular season game, and he just said 100% because, as you kind of alluded to right there, Alan, the environment there in Dublin, I thought, was spectacular the whole week long leading up to the game. And it was a Steelers home game on paper, but it certainly felt like it there at the stadium too.
Yeah, I mean, I think Steelers fans will travel anywhere. We've known that. I'm not surprised that a lot of Steelers fans showed up in Ireland, but I also think the Steelers, considering their connections with the Rooney family and the way they've really poured into trying to market themselves in Ireland, have a real opportunity to create fans there as well. And I think that's something that's so far fairly unique. The NFL plays a lot of international games. I don't know that the Jaguars have created a lot of Jacksonville fans in London. I do think the Steelers have that opportunity in Ireland, and I'm interested to see if they will be back. I think they will eventually because I do think there is an opportunity for them there. Not next year, like Aaron Rodgers said. That's not happening, but it'd be nice.
It would be cool. So, talking about the game now in particular here, it was complimentary football all around, I thought, both on offense and defense. But let's dive more deeper into the offense here. I thought it was an efficient game from Aaron Rodgers, 18 of 22, 200 yards, a touchdown. He was pretty much perfect with his completions until about midway through the second quarter there. And then running the ball, this is the best that we've seen the Steelers run the ball all season. Kenneth Gainwell had 99 yards, not 99 carries. 2 touchdowns from him, 131 yards total from the Steelers running back on the ground. Your thoughts on how this offense performed, Alan?
Yeah, I thought great, especially considering as of early Sunday morning, the plan was for Jalen Warren to play in this game. He worked out in pregame warmups, was decided at that point he wasn't able to go. Kenneth Gainwell inserted into the starting lineup, didn't really miss a beat there, had the best game of his career, 2 touchdowns, set career highs in attempts, rushing yards, and yards from scrimmage. And I really thought he was the best player on the Steelers offense. So credit to him, obviously, for being ready to go, and also Arthur Smith for being able to adjust the game plan on the fly like that. I thought that was nicely done. You didn't really see the impact of losing Warren, who had been the team's best player through the first 3 weeks of the season. I thought the offensive line had its best game too. So much of what they had been unable to do for the first 3 weeks was about not being able to run the ball and not being able to protect Aaron Rodgers. And I thought they were much better in both of those areas against the Vikings. And that's the real winning edge for the Steelers offense.
How much do you think kind of almost playing Darnell Washington 100% of the snaps and playing a lot of Spencer Anderson out there, how much do you think that really helped the Pittsburgh Steelers with this running game? Is this the solution maybe for them to be effective with running the ball?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was an obvious adjustment to make, but again, some credit to Arthur Smith for making it. They hadn't been playing Darnell Washington that much the first few weeks. When your offensive line is struggling and you have a 300-pound tight end on your bench, may as well put him in there. And I like Spencer Anderson's play as well. I thought that was a real advantage for them. That's not something they can do every week. Eventually, teams will catch on and start playing heavier and heavier personnel against it, but I thought it was a really nice changeup. and to really spark the running game. Darnell Washington in general, I think, can play more than he has, though. I mean, he hasn't. I understand they want to get John Smith and Pat Fryer with the ball. They've got a lot of flashy weapons there, and he's not that, but he's certainly every bit as crucial of a part of the offense as those other two guys. And I think the playing time had been a little bit lopsided the other way the first 3 weeks, and now it was flipped on its head here with Washington getting most of the snaps at tight end. But I think that was a nice adjustment.
Were you kind of surprised? I mean, I was a little bit surprised there whenever you see Washington, Anderson, and even Connor Hayward getting more snaps in this game than Jonnu Smith and Pat Fryermuth.
I'm a little surprised, but not a ton. Arthur Smith loves him some tight end play, and I don't think it's exclusive to the pass catching type. So I'm not really too surprised that they went heavy with with the way they struggled to run the ball. I think it makes sense to try to go down that road and see where it leads. Again, I don't think you can run your offense like that all season with it's essentially 7 offensive linemen in the game. But I think it worked for this week, and we'll see if they're able to continue to get better blocking from the offensive line going forward. Maybe they can swing back to using more of those tight ends for receiving options.
It was Aaron Rodgers' most efficient day at the office as a Pittsburgh Steeler. He recorded an average time to throw of 2.17 seconds, his quickest average throw time in a game since 2016. He really kept Brian Flores' defense at bay there. But my question to you, Alan, here is this really sustainable for Rodgers to get rid of the ball super quick? Because we kind of saw something similar during the late stages of Big Ben's career where he was getting rid of the ball really quick and defenses kind of honed in on knowing what was going to come in the passing game.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, I think it is if you're able to run the ball as well as they did on Sunday. If you can run the ball, then that's fine. We've seen, you know, teams do that over the years. But the injury to Calvin Austin also, throws a wrench into this as well. They were already pretty thin at wide receiver. Now with Austin out, who knows? I mean, maybe he'll be able to come back relatively quickly, but expected to be some sort of absence with that shoulder injury. Uh, there's really nobody worth paying attention to from a defense's perspective other than DK Metcalf. It's going to be really easy for them to hone in on that. I'm not sure how they're going to be able to continue this short passing game with if you're playing Darnell Washington and Spencer Anderson to run the ball. That means you only got one receiver out there, and so it's tough to see how this works. They have to be better, but I just think in general, if you look at the offense, I think they're 16th. They're tied for 16th in points scored through 4 weeks. And I think they'll take that. The bigger issue is the defense has not been as dominant as they thought it would be in terms of yards, especially, but in points as well. They've given the offensive short fields and they've taken advantage of that, and that's great. But the Steelers team is going to go where it needs to go. It needs to get there through dominant defense, and it hasn't quite lived up to that billing so far.
Absolutely. We'll get to the defense here in just a little bit here. I want to kind of circle back because you brought up DK Metcalf. He had about 130 yards or so entering yesterday's game. He had 5 catches, 126 yards, and a touchdown against the Vikings. That 80-yard score, man, he was moving down the field there. Just a really impressive play by DK. That was the longest touchdown in an international game in NFL history. Are you a fan of how they utilized DK yesterday, maybe compared to how they did the first 3 weeks of the season?
Yeah, I don't think it was a ton different, honestly. I mean, I just think it worked better. 5 targets. He's been right around that on average. And they've mostly been underneath looks. I mean, they've been trying to get him free. Teams are double covering him. They're putting a safety over top of him. So you're not going to be able to get him reliably down the field. And we already talked about the offensive line struggling to protect Aaron Rodgers. You don't want him standing back there 3 seconds, 4 seconds, waiting for DK Metcalf to find a way to get open. I think the quick hitter stuff makes more sense for him. It lets him take a real one-on-one rep because that safety is still back there, 10, 12 yards off the ball, waiting for the double team to happen. And then he's a really good player after the catch. It doesn't work for everybody, but he's a big, strong guy. He's hard to tackle. He's fast in open space. And I think you really saw how that works best with that 80-yard touchdown. Great block out in front by Calvin Austin as well. And I think that's how the Steelers can best utilize his weapons. It would work a lot better if they had somebody on the other side that could go stretch the field and keep those safeties from double covering him. Now imagine if all these DK Metcalf underneath stuff was happening with only one guy there to tackle him instead of two. You might see more of those 80-yard runs more often.
Absolutely. So I want to call this segment here Right Call with Riley. I'm going to give you two decisions in the game, maybe three decisions in the game that Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin made. And you tell me if you like them or if you didn't like them. So let's begin with the call on 4th and goal there. The Steelers go for it instead of kicking a field goal, which would have made it a 13-point game. Did you like the decision there, Alan?
I think it was the wrong decision, but I think it was made for the right reasons. When you have your offense, Aaron Rodgers was really demonstrative in saying, we want it, we can get it, we'll get it. Like, I like a head coach that says, okay, fine, like you guys want it that bad, go for it. I think the field goal was probably, to make it two touchdown game instead of a touchdown and field goal game was more valuable. But I like the faith in the players to say, okay, you guys want it that badly, let's go get it. Come up a yard short. The way the Steelers had been playing, I felt good about putting the Vikings on a 99-yard field, even though they ended up scoring after that busted coverage. I think in general, uh, probably like analytically speaking, I'd be like, yeah, just take the points. 3 yards is not any kind of gimme. But I think I just like the mindset from Mike Tomlin on that one.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you get a touchdown there, it's a 17-point game, and you pretty much put that game to bed. So let's bring up another decision that Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin made a little bit later. It was 4th and inches, Steelers in Vikings territory. They could have pretty much ended the game with the first down there, but they decided to punt. Greg Olsen was ripping the decision on the broadcast. Did you like the decision, Alan?
I did not like that decision at all. The punt ends up being after the penalty, and then it goes. I mean, not even close. I don't know if Corliss Waitman was told to kick it into the end zone, or if that was just a really bad punt. But I mean, it wasn't even close to being able to be downed in play. So a 20-yard net punt, basically, and then the Steelers are going to be playing not necessarily a prevent defense, but they're going to be shielding the sideline and trying to make the clock run. It's pretty easy to get 10 yards in those scenarios. So I mean, you're basically just you're punting away for two plays. I would take the two plays, and again, the clock ended up not being the factor here as the Vikings get stopped on 4th down. But so like, just try to win the game with a half a yard. I'd have gone back to the tush push play. I thought it worked really well the first time they did it. Why not? I don't know. I think that's a strange decision, especially after being so aggressive on the previous 4th down. I would have definitely gone for it there.
Yeah, and especially on a day two where your running backs, your ground game, it was working for you for most of the day there. It was the best day that the Steelers have had running the ball. So you brought up the tush push there. That was the third thing I wanted to ask you about, but it seems like you like their decision to kind of go and try and use a tush push. Did you like the personnel that was used in it with Connor Hayward and Mount Washington blocking from behind?
I think Darnell Washington pushing is the most obvious thing. I can't believe we haven't seen it yet. That feels almost unfair. And then also like you need somebody a little bit sturdy if you're gonna let Darnell Washington start pushing them. I don't want Aaron Rodgers involved in
No.
that. Absolutely. Uh, I don't know if running that play 10 on 11 over and over again is going to work long term. Because when the Eagles run it, of course, their quarterback is very involved. Uh, you're giving yourself a handicap if you put Aaron Rodgers 10 yards back there like they did, but it seemed to work. I like the creativity of it. Like that feels more like a gimmick than what the Eagles do, which is just unstoppable. But I think it was a gimmick that worked, and like I said, I would have tried it again.
Alan Saunders from Steelers now joining us right here on Black and Gold Overtime. We're going to take a quick break before we talk about the defense here. That's all coming up next year on Black and Gold Overtime. Riley Holsinger and Alan Saunders back with you here on Black and Gold Overtime. Steelers defeated the Minnesota Vikings yesterday, 24-21. Over the past 2 weeks, Alan, this Pittsburgh Steelers defense has looked maybe more as advertised. I know it's not living up to the hype that some players and coaches have said by thinking this is going to be the best defense ever. But this defense probably over the past 2 weeks looks more like what we expected. They've had 7 takeaways, 11 sacks over the past 2 weeks. Is this kind of the same thinking that you have here that the Steelers defense is more living up to its billing?
Maybe a little bit more. I still think they have a long way to go to become really the defense that I think they're capable of being. You can't As Patrick Queen said, take your foot off their neck. That was they let the Vikings back into that game when they didn't need to. And if you're going to talk about being a historic defense, look, I think the Vikings are a good team, but I mean, this is Carson Wentz and a whole backup offensive line out there, basically, at that point. Um, I know they didn't give up a lot of points when you look at the final total, but the way this game ended, the Steelers defense should be feeling like this should have been a laugher, and instead it was a bit of a nail biter. Not super, but it still came down to the final seconds of the game, needing another stop, and it really shouldn't have. So I don't think the defense should be satisfied with their performance at all. And I don't think they've been. When you look at the yardage total, they're down in the. I think they're 29th in yardage allowed through 4 weeks. Better the last two games, but still nowhere near good enough for a defense as talented as they are.
Absolutely. And one of the guys that has talked a lot of hype about this defense has been Peyton Wilson. He had one of his best games of the season, maybe the best of the season, with 13 tackles, 2 for loss. And he came up with arguably maybe the biggest play of the game, or one of the biggest plays of the game, when he reached 22 miles per hour, chased down Jordan Addison on that big 81-yard play there. Talk about what stood out to you about maybe Peyton Wilson, as well as a guy that you mentioned earlier, Patrick Queen's performance in the middle against the Vikings.
Yeah, I thought the linebackers were good. Peyton Wilson definitely had his best game. Really struggled early. Got mostly replaced for Cole Holcomb against the Patriots, and then came back. In this game, the Vikings don't run a ton of heavy personnel, so I think that made sense. But I thought he was really good against the run. I thought he was really good in coverage, collected a whole bunch of tackles. I thought Patrick Queen was a really good blitzer in this game, which was huge for the Steelers. They had been blitzing a good bit. I think they were third in the league in blitz rate entering this game. So it wasn't like they weren't blitzing, but they just weren't being impactful when they were. And I thought this game, you really saw the Steelers blitz impact Carson Wentz when they got home and when they didn't. And of course, they did get home a bunch, 6 sacks. And I thought that was really the other part about Patrick Queen. The communication was much better. Yeah, they had the one busted coverage, I thought in general the Steelers defense got lined up more effectively, more efficiently, and had fewer of those communications breakdowns. And he's the guy with the green dot. We blame him when things go badly, so we'll give him some credit when it does well.
Absolutely. And one of the guys that stood out in the pass rush, other than Patrick Queen, was, of course, Nick Herbig. I feel like every time this guy is out there on the field in obvious pass rush situations, like that guy always comes up and makes a big play. In the 2.5 games in relief of Alex Highsmith, he has 3 sacks, a forced fumble, an interception, 20 pressures, and 8 quarterback hits. I mean, what's the formula for Herbig? Like, they can't keep this guy off the field when Highsmith returns, right? Like, how do they kind of incorporate this puzzle of guys at the edge position?
Well, I think Herbig is a very good situational pass rusher. He's never been like great against the run. He's certainly okay. I think there's definitely room for all three of those guys at that position. You don't really want TJ Watt playing more than about 80% of the snaps anyway. So you can divide up the rest, and I think you can get all three of them out there at the same time sometimes as well. That's the big key for the Steelers defense. It's not been their ability to rush the passer. It's been their ability to get teams in obvious passing situations. They've been giving up so many plays against the run the first few weeks that it was 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, third. You're not going to tee off against the pass rush in the pass rush in those situations. And then against New England, they got some and they got dinked and dunked to death, giving up first downs on check downs and screen passes and draw plays and things like that. This game really felt like the Steelers defense came out in those 3rd and long situations. That's where a guy like Nick Herbig really shines.
And another guy that shined in his first game back from injury was Deshaun Elliott. I think he just showed kind of how important he is to the Steelers secondary out there. 6 tackles, a sack, a forced fumble, interception from him, 2 passes defended. Talk about maybe his presence out there and what stood out to you about Elliott's performance in his return.
Yeah, I mean, what an underrated guy. Came in as a very under the radar free agent last year and was really, really good. And I think it just showed you how good he was with his absence. He was great out there. The whole defense looked better with him in there. The communication was better. The coverage was better. He made plays on the ball. He made plays in space. He's really good. I felt like he was the better of the Steelers' two safeties last year, and that his play partially made Minka Fitzpatrick expendable. I think he really showed that today. He might have been their best player in the secondary on the whole, and that's really saying something for a guy that you signed kind of off the scrap heap, basically to a nothing contract a year ago.
Alan Saunders from Steelers Now joining us here on Black and Gold Overtime. Alan, one final question for you here before we let you get going. What do you kind of want to see from the Steelers improve on over the course of this bye week here? What's the one area that they need to get better at or learn from?
I'd like to see the defense do a better job of rallying to the ball and tackling in space. I feel like there's still too many times where there's a check down or a running back steps away from the first tackler, and there just is not that second wave of guys coming. Um, you got to get off blocks and you got to rally to the ball. And I think that's something this defense should be better at than they aren't, and it's something that's not easily fixable, but certainly is something they can approach over this course of a bye week and say, hey, we can get better at this right here. I mean, the offensive line, I think, needs to continue to improve, but given how young they are, I mean, that just feels like a length of the season kind of problem that isn't going to be solved in a bye week. If they continue to grow and continue to develop, you hope they're playing their best ball in January, and that's good enough. I don't think there's anything they really can do in 1 week. And Mike Tomlin even admitted this is going to be a pretty light bye week with the team coming back from Ireland. They landed around 11 p.m. last night, not doing anything today. That leaves them only 2 days of practice for the bye. And I think those will be pretty light sessions as they are.
The great Alan Saunders joining the program here on Black and Gold Overtime. And Alan, since I didn't get your Twitter right at the beginning of the show, I got to get it right now. You can read all of his stuff on Steelers Now, and you can find him on X at @asaunders_PGH. Alan, thanks so much for joining the program today. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Riley. We'll see you.
See you around, man. Riley Holsinger back with you for a couple more minutes right here on Black and Gold Overtime. It's always great whenever you wake up on Monday morning and the Pittsburgh Steelers have won a game. It's just a great way to start the week here. I know some of you might have PTSD of this growing up, but it's time for me to hand out my report card for the Pittsburgh Steelers and how they played in that 24-21 win against the Minnesota Vikings here. And you know what? You might have some PTSD from your report cards growing up, whether if you weren't good at math, science, whatever, English. There are some good grades to at least hand out today to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And typically when it's a win, you like to hand out good grades. I know last week, there were a lot of things that didn't go well in the win against New England, but there were certainly a lot of things that went well in Ireland against Minnesota. So for quarterback here, this is going to be an easy one. I'm going to give Aaron Rodgers an A. Thought it was his most efficient game as the Steelers quarterback, 18 of 22 for passing. He stepped up whenever he needed to, got rid of the ball quickly. He made the right decisions. I think by getting rid of the ball quickly, we didn't hear as much about Brian Flores and the type of defense with the exotic blitzes that we've heard so much about. I don't think that with Rodgers getting rid of the ball quickly, I think that kind of kept that all at bay. Go to running backs now. I'll give an A as well there. Kenneth Gainwell had the best day for a Steelers running back this season, 99 yards. Just a really good performance by him, the 2 touchdowns to go on top of it. I know a lot of people weren't expecting much maybe from the running game when Jaylen Warren went out, but Kenneth Gainwell answered the call and delivered. Wide receivers, this is going to be an A as well. I thought it was a really good performance by DK Metcalf. That's why you pay the guy all the money and you trade the picks that you can to acquire a guy like that. In the offseason, Metcalf had his best day as a Pittsburgh Steeler. Offensive line, I'll give it an A as well. It was the best game for the running game. Aaron Rodgers was mostly, it was mostly fine in the pocket. There were a couple sacks given up, but it wasn't as bad as what the line was in weeks 1 and 2. Defensive line, I'm going to go with an A as well. The Steelers only limited Minnesota to just 70 yards on the ground on 20 carries. First time this season that the Steelers did not allow 100 yards in the game. That unit keeps looking better. Derek Harmon has been a really nice addition to that front. Linebacker unit, I'm going to give it an A as well between Nick Herbig and TJ Watt. What they were able to do on the edge, and then you had Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson in the middle with some of their best games as a Pittsburgh Steelers. You give that an A, especially for a play with Wilson where he pretty much saved the game with that tackle on the Big Addison play that ultimately forced Minnesota to waste another minute on the clock because the Steelers' defense came up with some big stops. DBs, I'm going to give a C. They didn't really play that great. They're a gashed unit, and they gave up that long play. Special teams, C-. The blocked field goal there shouldn't have happened. Coaching, C+. I think there were a couple decisions that didn't work out for Tomlin there. So we'll give it a C plus there, but overall, passing grade for the Pittsburgh Steelers on this glorious Monday. Enjoy the rest of your Victory Monday here from Black and Gold Overtime. I'm Riley Holsinger. Take care.